the mistake I've made, and that I'm sure a lot of coaches are making, is they get so sucked into operating the business that they're not increasingly becoming more valuable themselves.
Yes.
And if you don't become more valuable, how are you going to continue to change the offerings that you're providing people and charge more money for them?
Welcome back. We're here for another episode, and I'm here with my friend Chris Cirullo. Did I say that right, by the way?
You did. You got it, man.
Let's go. Well, dude, thank you for joining me today. And I just want to, like we do on this podcast, I like to start getting to know about you, but specifically as it relates to coaching, because this is something that I think is kind of funny, actually. It's like, man, we have this problem in our lives often. Talk to a few people who are like, well, I'm actually just a good professional coach, so that's why I coach. But we often have problems in our lives that God gives us the grace or whatever it is to sort out. And we're like, man, that changed our lives. I think I could actually change other people's lives with this too. And like, that's an interesting thing that I don't think everyone gets to. So I'm curious what that was for you, if it was an issue in your life that led you to be like, man, this was so impactful. I'm going to teach other people how to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been such an interesting journey because this has evolved over time as I feel like I've discovered more of what is actually at the root of what it was that I solved. Because, on the front end, when I first jumped into coaching, it was kind of more of a traditional health and fitness coaching. Then I began to discover more about what I was seeing take place around habits or subconscious belief systems and all of this stuff. And it has morphed over the years. And I actually think that I'm landing in a different place. It's actually much more of like a mindset coaching approach. And I actually help people with a collective set of problems around their health and their family and their faith, integrating in to become an engine for their impact, if you will. But it started with like, oh, these people, they are successful, achievement-oriented people, and they seem to have these areas of improvement that they want to address with health and fitness, and that's what I've solved for myself. But I realized that beneath it was like, man, this is all this inner belief system, mindset, and framework, and what is applicable to help these people with fitness is also applicable in like these other domains that are equally important for them having the foundation they need for impact. And so it's just a constant discovery, right? Like you're just pulling back the layers of the onion and realizing that what I thought I had figured out, I actually didn't know exactly what was in my hand,
Totally. Was this your story with your own journey though, where you're like, man, I just want to get fit? Actually, there's a lot more stuff underneath that. Like, tell me about the origin story for you that you figured out that you even could be good at this.
Yeah, I think yes. So I was an Army Ranger, and I discovered during that season a lot of like mindset tricks and hacks and things that helped me kind of like build self-discipline and follow through, and ultimately realized that those things were shaping a persona or an identity or a set of beliefs for me. And those ended up serving me really well in all of these other spaces and helped me perform well in my career and take on new perspectives as a father and a husband in the home. And so absolutely, those were things that I'd experienced, but I just didn't realize how transferable they were and that those could be built into a framework. And I didn't even know that I was holding a framework. It was just like, these are these things that I put in place that helped me get through Ranger School or whatever, right? And then now, oh, this is an actual framework that can help someone. So,
Man, what is that framework? Like, I want to talk about that because, man,
oh,
you know what? Let's just take two steps back for a second, because there's so much that we could go into here. What are the frameworks? How do you develop the frameworks? And I think that's interesting that you talked about that word specifically, because high level coaching, especially high touch, high level with guys who have figured out a lot of other areas of life, to implement a framework like this is much more than to give them a tactic and hold them accountable. And so
yes.
maybe talk about your thought process for frameworks as a whole. And then, what have you figured out is the framework that you're holding?
Yeah. Let's see if I can answer this in the way that you're asking. So my mom is also a coach. My mom, for 30 years, 35 years, was a practicing physical therapist, built a really successful business, And then after she had retired from physical therapy, she became a coach to other clinics. And so she would actually help people develop systems and processes and hiring people and having, a new approach to mindset and all that stuff. So I say all that to say my mom got certified and does this work with something called the Y Institute. And she was trying to introduce this to me one week while she was visiting the family, and she had me go through an assessment with her and kind of figure out. And you get to, it's similar to other like personality assessments, or like Working Genius, if you're familiar with that. um, you come out the other side with, hey, what is this person's why, what is their how, and what is their what. And my why in their language is clarify. My how is simplify, and my what is the right way. And what that really means is that my constant approach in life is, how do I simplify this for somebody by clarifying what it really means and showing them that there is a right way to go about this. And so that in and of itself, it just sets the tone and sets the potential for building frameworks. You take anything, it's an evening routine, a morning routine, a way of approaching nutrition, a way to navigate health and fitness, or training your kids, or having a good marriage, or all these things. And you can look at your life and see these systems that you've designed and maybe done it by accident or done it by necessity. And then you can say, oh, well, is there a process to that? And then you just start writing it out and you're like, oh, well, this is a framework, and now it's got a name, and now I can teach it, and now it's got steps. And you take something that was a little bit more potentially accidental and organic, that I stumbled upon out of necessity, and now I make it something that I can replicate quite easily in somebody else's life, and do it in a way that's not confusing.
That's really good, man. I like what you said about stumble on it out of necessity. That's so much of what I relate to. And I'm going to take, maybe you should send me that link after we're done, because I want to take this, because what you just said about exactly like those three things, I'm like, that resonates fairly strongly with me. So now I'm
Yeah.
curious, because I was just going through a
Yeah,
bunch of
dude.
those things that I've done in the past to get a more clear vision of reality for who I actually am, because I have realized lately that I've spent a long time glossing over the parts of myself that I judged to be not as good, or even, just judging at all who I am, rather than accepting that there's different personalities and I got one of them and it just is what it is. So I'm trying to really clarify what it is that I'm good at, rather than wishing I was good at something else, trying to get other people's crosses essentially. And it's like, no, you got to carry yours, dude. So anyway, yeah. So what was this framework now? Because I want to eventually get into sort of the business side of things, but I want to tease some things out along the way. So what is the framework that you hold in your hand now, whether it's super specific or broadly applicable?
Yeah, it's relatively specific. I work with Christian fathers specifically who are business owners to help them basically grow income and impact through developing a foundation that supports all of those efforts. And that foundation is found in their faith and their family and in their fitness. And so the kind of overarching framework is called Built for Life. And really, I'm trying to help someone be built in all of the right areas for life. And there's three big tiers to it. There's a God-tuned mindset, strength on autopilot, and a mission-driven dad. And really, this is, how do I learn to connect with the Lord, hear His voice, let Him lead the way that I go through life, to develop healthy rhythms that I can sustain through any season. So, people's normal approach to health and fitness is a lot of start stop and do good for 6 months or 6 weeks or 3 weeks and fall off and wait a while and circle back and jump in again. And then mission driven dad. And this is about leadership in the home and leading people towards a multi generational vision for your family so you can be intentional and not reactive. And so most people's experience is that they're actually disconnected from God. They have a start stop health experience and they have chaos at the home, which really is um, like a lack of clarity, a lack of direction, all of that stuff. And so we have 9 action plans, or 9 implementations, if you will, that I put someone through that helps three in each of those areas really helps build out a well-rounded approach to living so it can fuel the income and impact growth that they want to have in their, business, career, or whatever it is.
Got it. Okay. So these are the essential foundational pieces of a man in order to achieve the things outside of the most foundational parts of him that he wants to achieve. So it's like, look, you could go
Yes.
for the business, you could go for the impact, but unless these three areas are dialed in, A, it's not going to matter. And
Yeah.
B, you probably won't get there in the first place. Is that about right?
Yes. That's exactly
Okay.
right. Yeah.
Okay. So talk to me about how you think about having a super broad program like that versus like, hey man, I'm just the health and fitness guy. Have you gone through that sort of transition?
Yeah. Um, it is interesting. So, um, part of this was out of necessity because uh, I began to ask the question, okay, if you think about coaching, um, there's three areas that are the most high in demand form of coaching, right? And it's inside of health, wealth, and relationships. Now, one of those three, and you can guess which one, is the highest paid form of coaching. Now, there's a million business coaches out there. There's a million people helping you, optimize your marketing funnels and, rewrite your copywriting and help you build out, automation in your workflows and like all this stuff as business coaches. But I don't see anybody out there helping someone in the area of wealth and impact that is actually doing so by way of the other two, which is the relationships and the health. And so you've got your family relationships, your community relationships, your relationship with God, and you've got your physical body that if those deteriorate, then your ability to actually do the other thing is greatly diminished. So as I was finding myself in the health and fitness space, I found that men were just needing more and that health and fitness became this way that people came in the door and they realized that they were in a much greater need. And so we were kind of applying like all sorts of things. It was like this was their foot in the door, and then they're realizing, well, this is applicable to like, I'm not leading well over here, and this is a disaster. And I kind of just found that I naturally flowed into this more well-rounded approach, and the fruit of it, the impact that I was having with people was much greater. And so I'm just kind of owning it. It does go against modern wisdom of like you should niche down, you should be really specific, you should solve a particular problem. And but as I've kind of broadened out, I feel like the business has actually had more impact and grown financially, which is interesting.
Yeah, no, very interesting. That is how I felt doing dad work a
Yeah.
couple of years ago. It's just like, okay, yeah, it's about being a better dad, but you can't really do that unless you've got your relationship down with your wife. And you can't really do that unless you've got your fundamental relationship down as a man.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, I guess we're just doing everything because you want the result over here and I could give you band-aid fixes, but unless we go to the core, we're not going to get there. So I've got a lot of time for this sort of thing and, have also flown against conventional wisdom. And it's like, what are you doing? It's like, I can't not. And I wonder how that looks in terms of your own ability to coach. How long do guys work with you to get these results across such a large area of their lives? How much time are you putting in? What kind of bandwidth are you finding you're capable of? Let's talk about the very practical realities of coaching guys like this.
Yeah, this has been a bit of a journey too because when I first was starting out, I was doing primarily just one-to-one coaching with folks. And I did not have this framework. That was in the health and fitness kind of realm and it was like I was still working with guys who were followers of Jesus, and this was kind of the space that they were walking in. We had shared worldview and values in that sense, and we had conversations around family and that sort of thing. But it was really focused on um, what you might expect from a traditional, health and fitness coach. And then over the next probably year and a half, I began experimenting with different group coaching models. And inside these group coaching models would do like cohorts and would build a framework that to take someone through for a cohort. And that framework just kept getting more and more well-rounded as I was going through this. And eventually landed on a membership model, and I've got a global community now of men, and there's a framework that they're going through, and I was able to really massage and clarify and redesign and all this stuff. So in more recent past, then launched back into one-on-one coaching, and I'm taking people through the framework now in a one-on-one coaching space. And it really does vary, but I would say if we had perfect execution, I think in 6 months someone can like completely turn their entire life around. You can look unrecognizable in 6 months. And you've got these 9 areas, so you think like 9 weeks at bare minimum if someone's like incredibly fast and super successful at implementing. Um, but a realistic is probably more like 3 to 4 weeks per framework. And some of them are a little bit easier to put in place and take less time. So you might have a 1 week here and a 4 week there or something like that. But I do think someone who goes all in, because we're not looking for physical transformation in the sense of in the next 6 months, you need to lose the 50 pounds. It's in the next 6 months, you need to be equipped to continue on the pathway to lose the 60 pounds and to be able to maintain that for the next 4 decades, because you've changed the way that you think, you've changed the way that you approach life, you have a new set of belief systems, you're ultimately a new man. And so that's the goal, is how do I deliver the inner transformation in the time frame that then allows them to carry on ongoing success.
Right. Okay. What's the difference right now between the group versus one-on-one? Why'd you go back? I should say, why did you go back to one-on-one? And the way that I said it was like, why'd you go back? So I didn't mean it like that, but why did you transition back to one-on-one?
Yeah, full transparency, the community became really robust, but it was incredibly hard to get people signed up for it. And so here I am, this was, I don't know, several months back, and there's 150 guys in my community, and it's vibrant. Like I had somebody jump in and they're like, dude, I'm so impressed by this online community. Like people are regularly posting and they're engaging with each other and they're answering questions for one another and they're like sharing, wins and insights. And this is really well done. And I'm like, yeah, it's awesome when they're in there, but I can't get someone to sign up for it. And I think it's a mix of things. It's trying to dial in like what's the right marketing messaging, what's the right approach to how to do this. People now, after many years of this, are kind of tired of low priced subscription models. Like we're just kind of burnt out on that. AI is making things really confusing because information is like readily available at all times, and we still have an information mindset rather than application mindset. So someone who can find the right information at the tip of their fingers feels like they're winning when they're still not actually doing anything with it. So there's a lot of stuff that went into like why it was really hard to get people into the community, which still exists and is still really vibrant. But I just said, you know what, Lord, what am I supposed to be doing here? And like I have this kind of sense a couple of years ago that he said, build it for impact and I'm going to bless it. And I was like, I feel like I'm doing that, but what's missing? And so I just decided one day, I'm like, hey, I'm going to put out what Talkie Moore calls the nine word email, right? It's like,
Yes.
and I just put like, hey, work together, and send an email and was like, hey, I'm opening up 5 spots for coaching. I haven't done it in over a year. Just feel like I'm supposed to give it a run. If you're interested, let me know. Reply here. And it was like super short and sweet. And, I blink and there's like 9 new clients, like high ticket clients. And I'm like, okay. I was like, in basically a week, tripled the revenue in the business. And I was like, okay, I think there's something here. And perhaps it is the fact that like AI and information and all this stuff, everything's so readily accessible and people are looking for ultra human touches.
Absolutely.
Like they want, and part of what I do with guys does sometimes involve prayer too. And so there's just things that like I do that you can't get without a coach like me. And I don't say that arrogantly. It's just that's the nature of being a human.
Yeah.
So
Man, I'm so glad you said that because I have been so bullish over the next like 5 to 10 years that human touch, service experiences, and just real life events are going to be like the huge frontier for business to sort of lean into. Because when everything, like you said, becomes information, becomes robotic, becomes whatever, it's like that core human need of connection and love doesn't go away. It just gets like more and more confused. So
yeah.
I love what you said about the high touch and the one-on-one. Like, man, I think you're completely right about that. And I love that you just put it out there. The thing I got in my own way so often, like, oh, well, this isn't part of like my plan. It's like, bro, just send the email. So did you know what you were going to do when you got those people? Like you had a plan you were going to walk them through, or did you just walk them through what you had already, just much more personalized?
No, I actually sold it totally differently. I said like, "Hey, this is flexible." And so one of the things that I hated about my previous model was that I sold 1-hour coaching calls every week. And it was like, so if someone was paying me X amount of dollars a month and they get a 1-hour coaching call every single week, plus all the offline stuff, and then something happens with our schedules, like they travel for work and they need to reschedule, it's on me to make space somewhere to fit them in. And I'm like, I don't like that. That you're the one in control of your life. You're making those decisions, and like I don't want my family to have to shift everything so I can accommodate clients who change recurring schedules at the last minute, you know. And maybe I'm being a little overly picky, but like that's what makes hands-on coaching actually really difficult to scale and to maintain, because it can be exhausting if you're not careful. And so I decided this time around the way that I was going to present it was, hey, there's probably lingering stuff that you're frustrated about that you've tried all sorts of ways to break free from and to like change the way you do fitness and to fix your family stuff. Or maybe you've got some lust challenges, whatever it is. Like, you know, if you want to figure out how to like break through those, let's talk. Let's figure that out. And we'll get into kind of a more prayerful approach to digging into what's going on. And there's a mental framework, and we can talk through if you want, but it was so much more open ended, and I was just like, you bring your problems to me, and I help you work through them. And it was like almost, and I hate this because this is not who I am at all, but it was almost like a therapeutic approach where it's like, oh, you just like you pay a therapist, and then you show up and you talk about your stuff, and they're like, oh, you know, and so that's how I framed it, and everyone jumped on it. And it was once I was inside of it with them, I was like, okay, even I need some framework for moving in a direction. And so I started rethinking it around the same framework, the Built for Life framework, and I was implementing that with guys. But the cool thing now is you implement these 9 things, and where you have dysfunction, we can now drill into that. So we've got a framework for what a whole, healthy, sustainable life looks like. And when you're dropping the ball in this particular area over and over again, or you're feeling internal resistance or friction or whatever, now we have a check engine light that we can drill into. And so we can go into conversation, we can go into like thinking through your past, we can pray, we can, you know, whatever. Now the coaching starts. And so
Right.
there's 2 layers of coaching, and it's like outlining the process for them to implement all these things and having the ability to do that really easily, and then digging deep when stuff hits the fan.
Man, I like that a lot actually, because I have been going back and forth in my head as I've been talking to coaches, and it's like, what is the actual best way to coach? Because the way I was doing it, I also came up with my framework. You know, we had hard to kill, easy to love, equipped to lead. There were these 3 pillars,
Yeah.
and each of those pillars had 3 things in them, of course. So, you know, it's just, I
Yeah.
guess we think fairly similarly, or that's the way you're supposed to do it. I don't know. And um, I was never sure how much I was supposed to be like, guys, just do the thing, and I'm going to make sure you do the thing, and we're just going to talk about the things versus like, and also you're a human person with a life that like sometimes things come up.
Yeah.
And man, like I sometimes I'm surprised how much people just need someone to listen to them. And it's like, it's hard to be like, oh yeah, I'm just a professional listener. But dude, some cases you ask a couple of questions and you listen, and guys are so disconnected from that today. And I think that's very important to remember as a coach that like you could just show up for them and trust your wisdom developed if you actually have the wisdom through the, the hard lessons and stuff like that. Is this one of those things that you dive into when you're actually coaching with a ton of confidence because you've been doing this so long, with the one-on-one stuff where you're like, man, I don't know what's going to happen here? What is your mindset as a coach over however many years it's been now?
Yeah, I think if I understood what you're saying, I think I am that way. I can jump on a call and kind of feel my way through and coach through things. I think, my religious background, like to me, that's a lot of discernment from the Holy Spirit. I just kind of I get a sense of what's going on and like where we need to go. But also I feel like one of the things that happens in my life is a thematic things. So I'll sense like God bring a certain concept into my life and it feels like it's just totally out of left field, but it's one of those unlocking moments for me and it brings language and direction to something I'm already doing and already offering people but didn't have the clarify, simplify kind of way to deliver it. And then realizing as I start to talk with some of these guys that it's like, oh, they all need this. Every single one of them. I like poke around, prod, ask some questions and it's like, oh, this is for them. And so I do, in a sense, just kind of trust that I'm bringing what they need to this experience, and they're going to have these light bulb moments. I don't know if you know who Rich Litvin is, but
Yes.
yeah, he wrote the Prosperous Coach, and um, I really learned a lot of this from him. Is like if I could just listen more and create space, because he said the how does he say it? Like the miracles happen in the silence or something like that. And basically, if you can pose insightful questions and take someone on a discovery process and then create the space for them to actually have the discovery, then like it's more meaningful for them. It sticks with them longer and it actually impacts their subconscious mind so they go do differently. And so this is why Rich, when he gets on coaching calls, like it might be 5 minutes. He might have blocked an hour to meet with somebody, but if they have an insight discovery in 5 minutes, he's like, great, I think we're done here. And they move on. And I'm like, yeah, that's the model I want to run.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's true. If you deliver value and this is a life-changing thing in 5 minutes, why do you confuse the moment by talking for another 55 minutes? Give that person time and space to process and go execute,
Mhm.
and they're going to be better off. You don't need to fill the void with noise because you're a coach and someone paid you for an hour.
Dude, that's a really good thought process there. That's really confronting, I think, to me and probably a lot of other coaches. And yeah, I read that book years ago when I was just starting to do, men's groups and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't know, like this is not systematized enough for me. And the more that I've been thinking about this lately, like this book just keeps coming up.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting to see just at least my own maturing process has been from like right now, put it in a system, smash them with it. And now it's like, dude, my own life has just been so impacted by the fact that that can't work because it's not human. There's a time and a place for it, but without the space that you're talking about, like, yeah, these breakthroughs can't happen.
Those same mental barriers that you're describing show up in other places, right? Like in my pricing model, I'm afraid sometimes to charge high ticket prices for what I do, even though I absolutely should. And when I really boil down intellectually, like I know that I'm delivering and I will deliver to people in a way that has, for some of these business owners, multiple six figures of impact, sometimes even millions, because of what we're doing in their mind and their heart and in their family and in their life. Um, but I wonder like, oh, in this, how could this framework and these 6 months be valued at this much, right? And it's the same thing with the coaching calls. It's like, well, how could 5 minutes be valuable enough for them to have paid me X, Y, and Z for that call? And so you just get in your own head about these things, and it because we have been trained by our society to be quantitative in rather than qualitative in our analysis of things. So I paid for I paid for 4 weekly calls this month that are 60 minutes long. And if we end at 59 minutes, like I'm getting cheated rather than it's like, no, I delivered a year's worth of value to you in the last hour.
Yeah. No, man, that's so good. There's like this flow that's coming out of, I think, the way that you're describing how you've moved into coaching. Like it's, yes, there's frameworks that's important, but at some point, and maybe again, this is just maturity and experience. I think at some point there has to be that space. There has to be the flow. There has to just be that listening and then an intuitiveness to what's going on and trusting your own experience. I don't know if you struggle with that at all, but like I think to myself, like, oh, did I do that thing that, like, whatever, some basic thing at home? And I'm like, well, I wouldn't have forgotten to do that because I'm the same person now as I was like 2 days ago. But there's some like disconnect in my brain sometimes where it's like, oh man, I don't know if I could really trust myself. And that's been an interesting thing that I've worked through. But it's like, man, I am like you, comfortable now walking into an open call and being like, because of all the stuff I've gone through, because of all the guys I've worked with, I'm just going to show up and something's going to happen and it's going to be okay now. And that's such a more relaxing place to be in. But of course, you got to earn your stripes that way. So I just, in terms of time, I want to pivot us to the actual tactics very briefly. I know it's
Yeah.
kind of boring, but it's not boring if you want to get these, if as your listener.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Let's start with how you're getting clients, because I know a lot of this has been changing over the last little while, like you told me before the call. But what are you doing these days? What's been the best thing that's worked? And let's dive in there. Quick pause, guys. I started my podcast a few years ago when I was first getting into high ticket coaching. I started it out of FOMO, honestly, because someone else in my space said they were going to start one. And my brain was like, well, if I don't start one before him, nobody's going to listen to mine. So I did. Anyway, it was accidentally the best thing I ever did for that coaching business. It turned strangers into believers and believers into clients. If you're a coach and you've thought about launching a podcast or just want to learn if it's worth it, let's talk. I offer one free coaching call to any coach who needs it to walk you through your ideas and show you what's possible. Just head to proclaimpodcasting.com/coach. I'd love to hear your story. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah. So that was actually a really challenging thing. And Rich's book on the prosperous coach, this is where I like really struggled, maybe like you did, on how to acquire clients. His model is just like having conversations and inviting people into coaching environments. And
Yes.
that worked for a time. And I actually like, I did see some progress with that, but it seemed, for me, I come from a sales and marketing background. And so I had this kind of like binary way of thinking about growth, which is like, there's the inputs, there's the outputs. And if I'm not doing those things, I don't feel right. And I'm probably not going to get clients. Um, so that led me down the track. I actually wrote a book this last year in 2024 and released that. And so that has actually become a book funnel for me. And, I sell the book for like $7. People get that plus some bonuses. There's an upsell on the backside of that in the purchase experience. And that allows me to maybe give them a intermediate step for 30, $40. That allows me to be net positive, net growth on the in comparison to the ad spend. So my return on ad spend, hovered usually between like 1.5, sometimes a little higher. And so I was making a tiny bit of money on getting new leads, which was a great model. And then, your traditional kind of like email sequence on the back end and things like that. But when I introduced the community, that was a kind of a game changer because it allowed, a place to filter in to a next level conversation in the space. And it was like, $57 a month or whatever. And so it was an easy step for people when it's positioned right. So those are kind of the things. It was like book, low ticket product, community, and now back to one-on-one kind of high ticket coaching experience at the top. And I'm looking at mastermind / like live event stuff to do maybe over the next year. I just haven't really figured out how I want that to look and what kind of value that's going to deliver that's uniquely different. And so I think if I can get that dialed, I think people love those opportunities. And, I'm a part of another ministry, and there's guys that go to a 4-day retreat and they pay, $4,000 for 4 days, and you get 40 guys in the room, and it's like, okay, well, that's an interesting play. So, yeah, just gotta sort the details.
Nice. And are you just doing these on Facebook, Instagram, that kind of stuff for the ads?
Yeah, yeah, they're just meta ads.
Okay. What's the sell? Just like, hey, get this cheap book. Do you want a better body? Like, what are you seeing what was working?
Yeah. Um, for the last half of 2024, what was really working was actually the fitness stuff. It was like, hey, Army Ranger, secrets to like how to, I forget the exact language, like, get fit, lead your family, and live a, meaningful life or something like that. And uh, those were working really well. I realized as we got into January, they were still working well. By the end of January, the whole New Year's resolution thing hit me, and I realized I was riding the coattails of a pre New Year's resolution kind of framework. Like people were actually buying this book through the holidays. I think probably anticipating that they are going to So I had a lot of activity through the last quarter of the year and a lot of activity in January, and then it just dumped off, right? And usually ads, they fatigue within a couple of weeks usually or more, like, but not, they don't last a long time. But I had the same ads profitable between 1 and 2 ROAS for like 4.5 months.
Dang.
And so I kind of got in this space where I was like, oh, I got this figured out and it's working, like, and then it just
Yeah.
tanked. And I was like, oh no. Like, and I haven't been running those lately. I've just been kind of milking off of the existing list that I had created and nurturing, and I'll be turning those back on soon. And I think seasonally it'll be good in the next 3 months to get those back up and running.
Okay. That's really smart. I love that actually. I like the cheap upfront pay for your own leads, essentially. Rather
Yeah,
than looking at it like I'm making money. Like I think there's a lot of confusion around that, like a tripwire offer. It's like, no, no, no,
yeah,
you're getting paid to get leads essentially. And like what could be better than that? And so you've got this super warm funnel the entire way through. So that's really cool.
yeah. And I think I had a lot of mental blocks on getting a book written too.
Oh yeah,
And
it sounds
then
it
when I
sounds
just
super hard, man.
well, I just buckled down and I was like, oh, it could be 80 pages. It doesn't have to be a big deal. And I wrote out my frameworks in like an 80-page thing and like told some stories, and got a lot of great feedback. It's a good book. But it doesn't have to be some like Amazon bestseller. You put something out there that adds value and tells people about what you do and introduces them to the way you think. And I mean, once now that it's done and like, hindsight's 2020, I'm like, oh, no big deal. And then like before that, I was like, oh my gosh, writing a book. Like,
Dude, I
so
literally, I think it was like yesterday or the day before, I bought a $7 ebook, knowing full well that I'm like entering into this person's funnel.
yeah,
But it was the same thing. It was like size 18 font and like 60 pages. I'm like, well, it gave me what I needed. And
totally.
that's the thing. There's like, I spent so long personally in dad work going like, if I don't give everything away, that's like 8,000 pages of explanations so that everyone gets exactly what I'm trying to say. Like, oh my goodness, they're going to be whatever. They're not going to think it's valuable. They're going to want more. They're going to go somewhere else because I can't do it. It's like, man, I complicated things so much. And so hearing that you've had great success with an 80-page book that was just what you were already teaching, plus some stories, like that's super encouraging, I think, for me and hopefully for people listening. What does it look like when people come through that funnel now? I guess it's changing with the one-on-one, but are you still sending out those 9-word emails? Is there just Ascension built in where it's like, hey, you've gone through 5 days of emails. Why don't you book a call? How's sales working now?
Yeah. Huh. Funny you mentioned this because basically, over the last week or so, I'm trashing, not trashing, I'm just stopping everything and reworking based on what is working. What's the 80/20? How is this flowing well? So where it's going to be is add to the book. If they buy the book, and that's all they do, they don't take the upsell, they'll have a 3-part email inviting them into a $37 challenge that is basically onboarding them into my community. Now they can do the challenge and then cancel and bail, or if they remain, they'll become now a recurring monthly paid community member at 57 a month. If they go add to book to challenge, then they have the choice to make after the 7 day challenge. Well, actually, the 7 day challenge provides them their first month free. Um, so the challenge is $37, gives them a month of membership free. Hopefully, they'll see the benefit of being there for 30 days in a community of like-minded men really pressing forward. The live coaching calls I'm teaching a workshop for an hour to an hour and a half every Thursday. And these are like, in my opinion, workshops I would usually charge like $100 for in terms of the value that I'm giving. And so $400 a month worth of workshop value inside of a $57 membership. So all they got to do is show up to one or two of those over that first month. And I think then it's really good. So if they join the challenge, but they decide to cancel, then they're also going to get a 9-word email along with 2 other follow-up emails inviting them into one-on-one coaching. Because the potential is they're tired of the community. They're tired of recurring memberships. They want what you and I were talking about earlier, which is actually the relational piece of this. Like they want to go deep personally with somebody that they know can like help them, and they don't want to have conversations like this with 100 other guys present. And so there's a very good chance that people that don't sign up for the membership or stay is not because your stuff isn't valuable. It's because they want a different context. And so I want to give them a chance to be invited into a different context.
Sweet. Yeah, I like that, man. That's very, again, counterintuitive, but I think you're probably onto something with the way that things are shifting. What about the guys in the community? Are they getting sold through something to be like, hey, why don't you become one-on-one?
Yeah, so this is an area where I've lacked is the ascension ladder inside of the community and like not wanting to keep, milking it for all it's worth, if you will. However, when I did put out this that 9-word email, like half of the people that I got came from my existing community. And they're still in there and they're still engaged, but they're just like, I just want to go deeper. And I trust Chris and I've spent time around him. And,
Yes.
now because of that, I'm comfortable spending a solid chunk of cash to go way deeper.
Are you
So,
doing are you doing any long form stuff to sort of nurture people in the middle of the funnel, so to speak?
yes. So, I've just wrapped my 100th episode issue of my newsletter, and so I write a long form, 1,000+ word essay every Saturday, and then I have recently started on the YouTube train and taking some of these concepts and actually turning them into 30-minute conversations about them and an invitation then into the book or depending on the episode, what's appropriate. So yeah, those are my 2 focuses. I'm simplifying the entire business. So if you look at my week moving forward throughout the summer, I'm going to have a writing block for newsletter. I'm going to have a writing block for video. I'm going to have a recording and an editing block for video. I'm going to have a 90-minute block for a coaching call. I'll have my one-on-one coaching clients, and then I'll have a few spaces where I'm actually creating a growth day. I don't know if you've read 10X is easier than 2X, but Dan Sullivan was strategic coach. Like one of his favorite things to do is to encourage people to plot their 150 free days on their calendar at the beginning of the year before they even go into the year. And on those free days, you're doing basically nothing. And then there's days within the week that are just designed for growth and thinking. So I have Mondays where I'm reading books on my craft. I'm learning marketing skills. I'm just growing myself as a coach so that I become more valuable. And I think the mistake I've made, and that I'm sure a lot of coaches are making, is they get so sucked into operating the business that they're not increasingly becoming more valuable themselves.
Yes.
And if you don't become more valuable, how are you going to continue to change the offerings that you're providing people and charge more money for them? And so I'm writing frameworks, I'm reading other people's books, I'm watching right now Graham Cochran is a pretty well-known business coach, and I'm watching his YouTube uh, uh, online course around leveraging YouTube with your own products. So how do you become a millionaire through YouTube without doing AdSense or brand deals or whatever? And so there's some really insightful things there. He's built two seven-figure businesses without any of that, all through YouTube. Um, so yeah, that's how I'm spending my time, and it's way simpler.
Yeah, I no, I love that, and that was on my yeah, it was in my notes the other day as well about like I need the time to specifically become better as a professional, not just through experience, but like I need the next skill
Yeah.
so that I can then offer that to my clients. And yeah, there was a time there where I was like, so in dad work, even in what I'm doing now, it's like I'm good. Like I know what I'm talking about. And as related to the coaching space, I was like, I bought so much into my framework that I almost stopped learning. And that was a really interesting thing because I wanted to learn. That was what some of the tension was at the end. I'm like, I think I'm sort of growing past some of this stuff. Not that it's wrong, but
Mhm.
I want to do more. And I just couldn't separate myself because I thought, man, well, I'm teaching these guys this is the way.
Yeah.
How could I be doing something else? So there's a weird tension that showed up there.
Yeah.
Um, how has that been for you? Like coaching is one of those things, especially at such a soul level,
Yeah.
and with so many aspects of their life. Have you found any tension in your heart where you start to like see yourself as the business, see the identity being Chris's coach, something like that? Like I got so caught up on a soul level with so many guys. It was one, exhausting because I wasn't doing it correctly. And two, it was confusing because I started placing my identity in what I was doing and teaching rather than in who I am in Christ. And so I'm curious if you've experienced anything like that.
Are you talking
Um,
about kind of like a codependency almost, or what are you? I'm trying to make sure I understand what you're saying, so I can discern if processed through that.
yeah, let's see. It could be a bad question. I'm always open to the fact that it's a bad question, in which case, well, that's another one. But it was difficult for me to set boundaries with the people I was helping because I took on such responsibility for the results. Has that been an issue for you?
In the past, yes. Yeah,
Okay. What
I
did that look
think.
like and how'd you get through it?
Hmm, yeah. I think it looked like what you were describing is like answering text messages in the middle of dinner, or like random stuff like that, which it totally goes against the culture in our family and the kind of environment we're trying to craft for our children. Um, I'm trying to think of how the shift took place, but I think I just realized um, people have to take responsibility for their own life, and in part of it was a perspective shift because I think I had a perspective that good coaches were always successful with their clients.
Ooh.
And I think that's categorically not true. I just don't think it's true. The same way that someone who sells an online course is going to help everyone that buys their course, or it's perfectly applicable to every situation. It's like uh, you do your best to communicate with authenticity what it is that they are onboarding into, and then you do your darndest to deliver that. And if they can't follow through with all of your correct efforts and intentionality and focus and heartfelt desire to serve them, that's on them. And that was freeing. I don't know how that realization came to be, but I think it's just like there's no business on the planet that perfectly serves every single customer they've ever sold. But we have a category in our mind for, like, I don't know, Apple. They're like, they're an amazing company. They build the best products, and it's like, well, they suck at some stuff, and there's people that don't like them and that have had bad experience with them or whatever. And I don't know. I just came to the realization I'm not a perfect fit for everybody. And if I delivered the way I was supposed to, then I think I earned. If I was upfront about what I was providing, I delivered to the extent that I was supposed to, and they did not receive what they were, the change that they were expecting, then it's a disconnect. But it wasn't an integrity issue with me, and I don't need to change who I am and what I'm doing in order to help them. They made the decision knowing full and well what they were getting into, and then they didn't follow through, and they didn't, it wasn't a good fit for them. And so, yeah, there's been cases where I've, refunded people because it's just like it's not a good fit, and it's clear from like a stamp. It's like, okay, this is not going to be good. Let's just call it here. And um, but I think that was freeing because I'm not responsible for everybody's life. And
Yeah.
if this is why I asked if it was codependency, because if I take on the framework that I'm their savior, that's going to be destructive to them. Because if I'm always there to draw them out of trouble, then I actually haven't coached them in a way where they can navigate life on their own. And I'm doing them a disservice because ultimately a coach's job is to navigate and equip an individual to continue successfully without a coach in at least that particular area. And so by constantly saving them, yeah, and maybe I got this from Rich Litvin. I don't remember, but it's like I'm not their savior.
Yeah.
And if I don't solidify that in my heart and in my mind, then I'm gonna screw us both over.
Yeah, dude. Man, that's such a well put together explanation that I wish that I heard 2 years ago. Because
Yeah.
I just, dude, like as much as I was like, okay, I recognize the position I'm in, trying to be humble here,
Yeah.
even with that alleged awareness, like the deception was still pulled over my eyes. I was like, I gotta help these guys, and they're paying me so much for this, and like, and I know how to do this. And so there was like, there's a lot of stuff that's been broken over the last year and a half, thank God, by this refiner's fire related to how I related to clients. Because for me, it was like, I didn't have any training as a coach. I didn't even, like you said, I didn't know what the job of a coach was. Just like, I can help you. Like, of course. And this will change your life.
Yeah.
And it's freaking amazing. Like, yes, let's go. And then it was like, ooh, there's something interesting about how I relate to people who are close to me, who I now feel like I owe them something because they paid me. So there was a huge shift for me. There's a lot of mental space that needed to change over the last 2 years that I hope people can, hearing this and hearing you, benefit from earlier than I did, because it was a painful lesson. And I literally feel like within the last week, I'm coming out of that. Like it's crazy. So I'm
I,
appreciative of how you said that.
I want to add one thing here too, because I think this is like the difference between need and want. And I think I was needy coming into these relationships with clients because ultimately I needed to pay the bills. And I was
Yes.
operating from a scarcity mindset rather than I would love to have a new client that's the right fit. I was going into these as I need. And so um, there was an idol around my reputation. There was an idol around like delivering on result. Like I just couldn't. I need you to be my client to pay me, and then I have to hold on to you, and I can't lose
Yes.
you because if I lose you, where am I going to get the next client from? I don't know. And that's this thing that coaches do, and I was so victim to that when I realized that I don't have to do that and I can want clients and I can want the right clients. And if this person in front of me isn't the right client, there is one out there. Case in point, not too long ago, somebody was reaching out about coaching and um, told him about it. And, he came back with some stuff. And normally I would fight for that as a former salesman. And I was just like, hey, great. Usually when guys come to coach with me, they're done with all the negotiation between themselves and me and all the things going on. They're just kind of like ready to jump in. So clearly you're not there yet. And so I don't think it's right for you to move forward. And I was like, boom, cut it off. A week later, comes back to me, I'm ready.
Let's
And
go.
I was like, you know, and you look at this same dynamic with teenage kids. Think about high school. You know, if you're chasing the popular girl, like she's gonna be repulsed by you. But if you're like no big deal, I don't care, I'm confident, whatever. Oh, you're not that big a deal to me. Then she's attracted to you. Now, I'm not saying that's right. You know, that doesn't align with the way I think relationships should go. But there's something in our kind of like broken human nature that wants to be wanted. And so if you're a coach showing up and I need you, then you're going to actually repel people rather than attract them. And if you've set the tone from the beginning that, hey, I'm here to help you as much as you want to be helped, then the boundaries are really easy to keep in place and you don't have to bend over backwards to try to like serve and be the savior. They realize like, oh, I need Chris, you know? And so I'm going to do the things and I'm going to show up to the call on time. And it's like the whole dynamic changes.
Dude, that was an excellent word. That was an excellent word on my heart. And I guarantee it's going to be a good word on people listening as well, because like there's not a lot of training on this stuff, right? Like
No.
they're just people jump in. There's a ton of coaching programs about it. Hey, you want to learn how to coach? Okay. It's like, here's how to set up your marketing. Good luck with the coaching.
Yeah.
And so that identity, and again, should it be an identity? No, but it's part of the identity as coach. And if you cannot keep that where it needs to be with the boundaries, I mean, I suffer from it and you're explaining how you suffer from it. I think it's a super important thing for people to understand before they go too much further down that path, because I can speak to that's destructiveness. Anyway, dude, this has been really good. Like this has been way deeper than I was even anticipating. So I appreciate you going there and I'm really glad you're able to share. Where can guys check out what you're doing?
Missionfit.co is the way to go.
Excellent. Guys, thanks for joining us. This is the Real Coach Show by Proclaim Podcasting. We'll see you next week.